So what I want you to do today, there's 2 days in the class that we do writing, almost the whole class. And today is that second day. The first day was that good day, bad day. Today is the second day. I'm going to set it up. I'm going to give you prompts along the way. But it is going to be kind of a heavier day. I'm not going to ask you to share. So please feel free to get deeper into your writing. So let me kind of, before you get your stuff out, let me set this up a little bit. We're going to talk about time management. We're going to talk about kind of goals and it moving forward. But what's important before you even begin to do that is looking at what your deepest values are. Because one of the most important components of moving towards goals or moving towards effective stress management is that you carry some kind of passion around it. If you don't have passion, it's not going to go anywhere. It's going to fall flat. And to be able to be passionate about something, that needs to be based on your values. Otherwise, Stephen Covey, who wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, it's like the Bible of self-help and goal succeeding. And he said, otherwise, it's like climbing a ladder and climbing and climbing and climbing and climbing this ladder and finally getting to the top of the wall. And then you find that the ladder's against the wrong wall. So before we even talk about time management, before we even talk about goal setting, before we talk about any of that, it's really important to look at what your deepest values are. Otherwise, like I said, it's like climbing the ladder and then getting to the top and finding you're on the wrong wall. I had a friend once, I'm glad you're not mostly, some of you are seniors, but I'm glad you're not mostly seniors, because I used to have mostly seniors and I would tell this story, they go, oh. I had a friend once, this is a long time ago, when I was in my master's degree program here, and we actually met in like the very beginning of our bachelor's degree, and so we went through the whole bachelor's program, and then we just happened to come back to school and do the master's program at the same time. And we were in totally different programs, but we were really good friends, and we kind of remained friends through it all. We went through our master's degree programs at the same time, and in her discipline, you could graduate without being completely done. You could have 3 outstanding units. You couldn't do that in my department, because in my department you had to write a thesis, and the thesis was 9 units. And so even if you could graduate with 3 outstanding, you never had 3 outstanding because the thesis was 9. So that's the way they prevented you. But in her department, you could graduate with 3 outstanding, and all she had to do was a paper for those 3 outstanding units. And so she went and she graduated and she walked across, and when you graduate, before you really get the units, they don't really give you your diploma, but they let you do the graduation thing and actually give you your diploma later. And so she did this. And so the next quarter, this is one of our quarter systems, the next quarter, all she had to do was sign up and finish. And she had it was just a paper that she had to write, and she had most of the paper written. But she couldn't get herself to finish it. All she had is to finish this paper. And she couldn't get herself to do it. So she signed up the next quarter. And she'd go to the library. She was putting all kinds of time. It wasn't like she wasn't putting time into it. She'd go to the library, she'd put all kinds of time, and she'd working on that paper. And she couldn't finish it. Signed up again the next quarter. Same thing, every day in the library, all kinds of research papers, all kind of writing. She just couldn't get that paper written together. She did this for 5 years, every quarter for 5 years. And then it gets worse. It gets worse. Because when you're in a program, after you're in the program for 7 years, you start losing classes, because they figure after 7 years, the time relativity of the information that you've learned is kind of getting old. So after 7 years, you start losing classes in the same order that you took them in the first place. So after the 5 years, she had to start even taking classes again. So she started taking the classes that she had taken 5 years earlier, or now it was 7 years early because she had worked 2 years to try to finish this thing. And she would start taking those classes. So every quarter, she'd try to finish that paper and take more classes. And she did this for another 5 years. She went through that program twice. She took all the classes she needed because she was losing them at the same rate that now that she was retaking them. And went through the whole program class-wise twice, still couldn't finish that paper. And again, the time that she had worked, it wasn't like she wasn't putting the time in. She was in the library every day. I've never seen anybody work harder. But she couldn't get herself to finish it. Never did. Never finished it, never got her master's degree. But went through the program enough for 5 master's degrees. Why? She was in the wrong program. She was in the program her dad wanted her to be in. If she picked her own program, it would have been completely different. But she was always trying to be the perfect little girl, and I'm going to do what dad wants. And she couldn't get herself to finish because she knew she was in the wrong program. And so the idea here, sorry about the story, I know it's kind of depressing, at least hopefully you guys are early enough in your career that if you're really doubting it, you can think about this a little bit. Because the idea here is if you start, I don't care how hard you work, how hard you arrange your life, how much time management you do, how much you organize yourself, if it's not based on the right things, it's not based on the right things. And after this lecture, I can tell you I've had people actually change their majors, some people change schools, and that's okay. Because if that's what you need to do, that's what you need to do, and it's better to know it now. And so again, the idea is you need, before you start all of that stuff, you need to really understand what your deepest values are. Stephen Covey, who did write the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the very first chapter is called First Things First. And that's what he talks about, first things first. You've got to have it based on the right stuff first. You got to have passion about what you're doing. You got to have reasons to do it. Good reasons and bad reasons. The good reasons are the things that you will be getting from doing it. The bad reasons are the way you're going to feel about yourself if you don't. And those are what serve as the motivation to get you through the times that you might not be so motivated. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do a process to get you into your deepest values. Now, if I just ask you what your deepest values are, you might write some stuff. And it's not going to nearly be as pushing you to go as deep as I'm going to push you to go today. And, you know, I'm not meaning to be, you're going to go, when I tell you what we're going to do, you're going to go, oh my gosh, I'm not meaning to be morbid in any way. But it's going to make you go a little deeper than if I just said write about your values. So I'm just going to give you a minute or two. I want you to get out something to write with. So you guys ready? And again, we're going to do different prompts along the way, and I'll try to tell you kind of how many minutes you're going to have for each specific prompt. So I want you to imagine. Just sit here and imagine for a minute before you start writing. I want you to imagine that you've just walked into this room. And it's kind of a beautiful room. And you look around, and there's like a bunch of people you know. But they don't necessarily know each other. Some of them do, but not all of them do. And the reason why they don't is that you're like, wow, that's from this part of my life. And wow, those people are from this part of my life. And wow, there's some people from, you know, there's a whole bunch of family, and this is really bizarre. And then you look around, and there's like, you know, the whole room is decorated with these things, like things, mementos from your life, or, you know, pictures of you, and all of a sudden it strikes you, you've walked into your own memorial service. Okay? So you've passed from this life. You're walking into your own memorial service. And what I want you to do, there's several people there that are getting ready to talk. And what they're talking about is they're talking about you. They're going to give your eulogies. Who you were. What you stood for in this life. Who you were at the deepest part. And so what I want you to do right now is I want you, and it can be from one person's point of view, it can be one eulogy from like several different points of view, or it could be like, you know, three different, you could pick like somebody from your family and somebody from your work life and somebody from your friends, or however you want to do this. But I kind of want it to span your whole existence. And what I want you to do is I want you to write what you would like them to be able to say about you in your eulogy. Now, I don't care, again, this isn't meant to be morbid in any way. It's meant to get you to dig deep. So I don't care if you're 110 years old or if it's tomorrow. That's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is that you really dig down deep, and I want you to write, like, you know, so you're writing your own eulogy of what you would like people to be able to say, like them to be able to say, not necessarily what they would right now, but what you would like them to be able to say about you and the way you lived your life. Next thing I want you to do is I want you to write down, and this you can just list, I want you to write down 15 words or short descriptive phrases that you would like people, not necessarily what they would, but 15 words or short descriptive phrases that you would like people to be able to use to describe you. 15 words or short descriptive phrases that you would like people to be able to use to describe you.
Does it have to be like the current you, or can it be someone that you want?
That's what I'm saying, that you would like people to be able to use. Yeah. Doesn't have to be the current you. It's what you would like people to be able to use to describe you. Not necessarily what they would, but you would like them to be able to do. And once you have 15, I want you to circle the 5 most important to you, or highlight or bold or whatever you need to do to differentiate the 5 most important to you. And this is probably better done from a quick, heart, intuitive space rather than kind of a analytical space. So now the next thing that we're going to do is I want you to imagine, and again, I'm not trying to be morbid with this, I'm just trying to get to what your deepest values are. I want you to imagine now an angel's come to you and she's told you you have a year left to live. And actually, it's the greatest gift she could have given you, besides longer life. Because what she's told you, and you're not going to get sick, and it's not about trying to put your affairs in order or anything like that. And again, it's not meant to be morbid. You can pretend you're 110 years old. The idea is that somebody's told you you have a finite amount of time left, and even how much that time is. And so what you do in that time is like gold to you. Just 1 second, okay? Just like absolute gold to you. Absolute gold to you.
So what I want you to do now is I want you to reflect on what you would do with that time left. And again, you're not sick, money's no object, you can pretend whatever the circumstances are that you feel comfortable with. But the idea is you have a finite amount of time left, you know you have a finite amount of time left, that finite amount of time left is fairly short. What are you going to do with that year? So now what I'd like you to do, and you can choose this last part, actually it's not the last part, but it's coming up to the last part. You can choose this part however you want to do it. You can write it as a bulleted list if you want, or you can write it as a narrative if you want. But what I want you to do is I want you to think back on yesterday, or I want you to think back on like one of your typical days if yesterday wasn't a typical day. And I want you to just write down, either again in narrative or in list form, everything that you did from the time that you woke up until the time you went to bed. Okay, find a stop-in spot. So I just want you to look over what you wrote, all of it, just for a few moments. And I want you to see, and there may or may not be, but see if there's a contrast between everything that you did yesterday and the other things that you wrote. And just kind of look at it for a few minutes or a few moments. So the idea here is a couple things. Number one, we're trying to identify what your deepest values are. The other thing that we're trying to do is we're trying to look at what your life really looks like and see maybe ways you might be able to better incorporate those values in your day-to-day life. Because I'll tell you, what happens, and this happens for most people until the day they die, is that they're always gonna do something. Right? As soon as I get done with school, I'm going to do something. Or as soon as I get, whatever I get done, as soon as I move out, I'm going to pay more attention to the people in my life. Or as soon as you always hear this, as soon as I retire, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. And so many people end up like dying soon after they retire, or something happens and they get disabled. But I know people in their 70 and 80 years old that are always just going to, as soon as I get here, I'm going to start living. As soon as I get here, I'm going to start living. As soon as I get here, I'm going to start placing more emphasis on my values. And this isn't about right and wrong. It's not about trying to make you right or wrong in any way. It's just an invitation to look. Okay, so there's one more piece to this, and it's one more piece, but there's kind of two components to it. The first component is I want you to look back over the first three things that you wrote, your eulogy, the descriptive words and phrases, and what you would do with the year left to live. And I want you to kind of synthesize that in what are your deepest values? What are the things that are most important to you about who you want to be, live your life? And then the second part to that is knowing that you're in school and you have busy lives and, on and on and on, knowing all of that, still, what are some opportunities, and only you can answer this, and I'm not judging you by what you write. This is, again, just an invitation to look. But what might be some opportunities for you in the spaces of your life to be able to incorporate more of what you wrote in those first three pieces. Does that make sense? I mean, the last piece about what you did yesterday obviously was about trying to look at the contrast, because most of us go through our day-to-day life not even thinking or living what we say our truest values are. So two pieces to this last piece. Number one, what did you find out? What did you find out about your deepest values? and who you want to be, how you want to spend your time. And then the second piece, what are ways or opportunities? Knowing, given that your life is the way it is, what are spaces and opportunities that you might be able to incorporate them more often? So go ahead again, this is the last piece. Sit up where you can breathe. I want you to close your eyes for a minute. Take a deep breath. Again, let your shoulders just fall back and down. Raise your sternum just a little bit so you can take a deep breath. It's not pushed up. And just take a deep breath. Close your eyes. And what I'd like you to do with your eyes closed again and making sure you're breathing with your shoulders back, I just want you to imagine yourself displaying those characteristics that you said were so important in your eulogy. Just take a few moments again, sitting back, closing your eyes, and just really imagine yourself in a situation where you can really experience, it's not just thinking about, where you can really experience the feeling of what you said was important in your eulogy. And again, as deeply as you can, feel it. Feel it. And now, as crazy as it sounds, I want you to tug on your ear. So what that last piece did, and we're going to talk about this more next week, if you can get yourself into a felt state and you do some little physical trigger, just doing that trigger can bring back that felt state. So this weekend, I want you to tug on your ear and remember those values and try to bring up that felt experience.